The pre-dawn countryside of La Mancha was shrouded in a deep blue haze, and moonlight streamed over the thatched roofs like liquid silver. In Alonso Gajano's attic, 12 candles flicked in brass sconces, casting his shadow on the mottled walls, a shadow that sometimes swelled like a giant and sometimes shrank like a dwarf. His calloused fingers trembled as they stroked over every dent in his ancestral armor, the rust turning into glorious battle wounds in his eyes. Suddenly, he picked up his blacksmith's hammer, and the sound of clanging woke the housekeeper sleeping downstairs, and sparks from the clash of metals splashed onto his parchment. In the stable, Rocinante, the ribbed old horse, stamped his hooves restlessly, his nostrils puffing out 2 streams of white gas. He watched his master flatten an oak plank with a kitchen knife and tie the ridiculous piece of armor around his head with a strip of the cook's apron. From now on, he knelt on one knee and laid his rusty saber across the saddle. You are honored with an incompetent bay horse rare, and will carry the bravest knights of La Mancha to create epic poetry. By the time the first rays of sunlight pierced the morning mist, the self-appointed knight was already riding. Twilight drenched the Castilian wastes like poured wine, and the crooked and leaned like a drunken man at the crossroads. The moth-eaten sign creaks in the wind, and the blurred words "the Rose Tavern" have long since faded to a pale pink. Don Quixote squinted his nearsighted eyes, and the dilapidated oak door transformed. "Greetings, Sir Knight." The shopkeeper was counting the books with wine-stained fingers when he was suddenly met with a cold cardboard faceplate against the knot of his throat. In the courtyard, Don Quixote placed his rusty helmet on the mossy, weld platform as an altar, and 2 silk merchants from Toledo held back their laughter. The aroma of roasted suckling pig from the kitchen mingled with the rainwater that had accumulated in his holy helmet, creating a puddle of oily sewage on the cobblestone floor. Late at night, the white moonlight illuminated his armor like a skeleton. While he was guarding the holy helmet with his sword, a few footmen in the shadows were urinating. Clang! The loud clang of the bucket being kicked over startled all the animals in the stables. In the absurd melee, the broom handle broke his last intact molar. Horse manure smeared his carefully patched cardboard faceplate. And the startled watchdog, always barking furiously at the plush pajama pants peeking out of his gauntlet. Whips cracked like firecrackers in the birch forest in May, when Don Quixote rushed into the forest clearing. Andres, the 15-year-old shepherd boy, was hanging from the dead branches of a 100-year-old oak tree, his back covered with purple and red whip marks, like a living picture of the martyrdom of Saint Sebastian. The tip of the farmer's cowhide whip was still stained with bloodied shreds of wool and glistened wickedly in the sunlight. In the name of chivalry. The rusty tip of the sword rested against the farmer's triple-chinned, fat belly, and the inscription on the blade, "To my love, Dulcinea," reflected right back into the other man's bloodshot right eye. As the knight's back disappeared into the dust, the farmer drew a thicker oak branch from his belt and dipped it into the salt shaker with a grin. "Now I'll show you a real whip, you little bastard." The shrill whistle of the branch, cutting through the air, overlaps marvelously with the sound of church bells in the distance. Don Quixote looks out from a distance on a hillside, the wind sending vague screams that he hallucinates as angelic chants. He contentedly wipes the non-existent blood from the blade of his sword, not noticing that the glass bead set in the hilt has fallen into a molehole. The setting sun gilded his tattered cloak, so that from a distance it actually looked like a glorious robe. While at the foot of the mountain the shepherd boy was bandaging his torn shirt with his teeth, drops of blood blossoming into eerie little flowers on the dandelion bushes.